are focusing on medications, so I am going to choose medications as the category. And then again, I have another level of filtering that's available for me. And this is regarding the phase. Is it an acute condition that's being treated? Is it subacute? Is it chronic? If the recommendations that I'm looking for are specific to the pre, peri, or post-operative periods, then surgical is going to be available to me as well. And when I click go, now all of the medication recommendations for carpal tunnel syndrome are being populated for me to take a look at. I'm going to go ahead and open up this second recommendation, and here I can see that NSAIDs are appropriate for post-operative care of carpal tunnel syndrome. I'm provided with a level of confidence for this recommendation, indications, frequency, dose, and duration information when that exists, indications for discontinuation, the rationale supporting this recommendation, and an evidence summary. When I click on more, then it opens up a new tab, and I can see the full breadth of text supporting this recommendation. There's also a link here out to the evidence tables to be able to take a look at the literature that's supporting this particular recommendation and the scores that literature received. Again, if I click on that link, a new tab opens, and here's where I can see the evidence summaries, again, supporting this particular recommendation. From wherever I am on the website, if I go back up to the top of the page on the left-hand side, there is the MD Guidelines logo. And wherever I am, if I click on that, I'm going to go back to the home page of the guidelines. So again, DART is a tool that helps to get to very quickly the recommendations in the guidelines. And then we have a tool for the formulary. So in the guidelines, there are cases where specific medications are called out. So for example, gabapentin is a specific medication. It's called out by name. But in other cases, like NSAIDs, it's the class of medication that is listed in the guidelines themselves. And the formulary helps us to understand what specific NSAIDs are being recommended for specific conditions. So again, the formulary tool will allow users to look up information on specific medications. Again, the formulary is condition specific. So depending on whether you're treating low back pain or tarsal tunnel syndrome, we anticipate that different medications will be appropriate. And the same thing goes with the phase. So if it's an acute injury versus a chronic injury, we anticipate that different medications might be appropriate. And a good example of that are opioids. So whilst they might be appropriate in the acute phase, they may not be appropriate in a chronic phase of a condition. There are two ways to search in our formulary. The first way is to search by the condition itself. So I am going to stick with the hand, wrist, and forearm disorders and the carpal tunnel syndrome example that we had been looking at. And when I click go, then I have a number of different results that are available to me on this page. And I can go ahead and enter in acetaminophen. So that was an example that had been provided in the demonstration today. And when I open that up, I can see that acetaminophen is appropriate for acute postoperative pain. There are some comments here for the prescriber to keep in mind. And we also have claims professionals that are using this tool, so we do call out some comments for them. There are the common diagnostic codes that we would see associated with this condition, an average estimated cost, and then references back to the full-length guideline. So today, these references exist as static references, page numbers, if you will. And we are going back through the formulary right now and turning these into live links. So the link would actually take the user to the place in the guideline where this recommendation resides, so that users can read the associated information in context of the full guideline. So this becomes really important when a medication, for example, is perhaps non-exempt for California, but is recommended in our guidelines. So I'm going to stay right here in the formulary, and I'm actually going to go ahead and enter Percocet. So this is an example of a medication that I know is non-exempt on the formulary. However, we indicate in the guidelines that it is appropriate for the acute postoperative phase of carpal tunnel syndrome. Again, a number of comments for the claims professional here that gives some really good information, including some criteria for this particular prescription recommendation. We then, again, the same information that we saw in the previous screen, so codes, average estimated costs, and in this case, the reference here first points to the hand wrist informed guideline, and second is also reaching out to the ACOEM opioid guideline to get information there as well. So again, by the beginning of the year, we'll have these turned into live links in order to help users get to that full-length content. I'm going to go back to DART for a second because I do want to make a comment about the DART tool. It also will have links from the recommendations. So every entry that is in DART will actually go to the full-length text itself, so that users, again, can go from DART into the full-length guideline to get the information that they're needing. But before I leave the formulary page, I also want to talk about this secondary tab, which is called Search by Drug. This is yet another way to get at information within the guidelines themselves. So, for example, if I'm looking for information on, I don't know, let's go ahead and look for gabapentin. When I click go, I'm going to be provided with all of the entries in across all of the guidelines that have a reference to gabapentin. So depending on what I'm looking for, all of the information is here. So then I have a couple of different ways to filter this. So if I'm looking for information on low back disorders, I can go ahead and filter for low back disorders. I can come into the recommendation and I can see that, again, it's appropriate for chronic, radicular, and severe pain. If I was looking for information on perioperative management, I can open that up, and again, here's the information for that particular recommendation. So searching by drug allows me to see all the places where that drug is mentioned in the guidelines, and search by condition allows me to come in according to the specific condition. So a couple of different ways to get to the same information. And then just as a reminder, we'll be adding those links both to the recommendations that are in DART and to the recommendations that are in the formulary to take users into the full-length text. I have just a couple more minutes, so I just want to summarize really quickly. Clicking on the MD Guidelines logo will always take you to the home page. Finding recommendations in the ACOEM practice guidelines, DART, and formulary tools allow users to get to recommendations and the formulary allows you to look at specific medications. And resources, and going to the state guidelines allows you to access all of the California MTUS guidelines. And once in a guideline, several ways to navigate to the content. One is by using that summary of recommendations table. The other way is to, to go in through either diagnostic interventions or treatment recommendations, depending on the type of information that you're looking for. The last thing that I'll say really quickly in closing, if you go to the ACOEM practice guidelines page and go to the disorder guidelines there, you'll see they're actually the very same guidelines. We've just released a traumatic brain injury guideline, so this is the only difference between the two pages that we've looked at. But I did want to let you know that stakeholders can provide input to ACOEM by clicking on this link over here, and it gives you a form to fill out if you do want to provide input on the guidelines themselves. And with that, we're out of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy, for the presentation. We appreciate your demonstration. I wanted to let everyone know in the slide deck we have compiled a list of useful resources related to the MTUS and the formulary. These links are also posted on our division website. And thank you very much for attending the MTUS drug formulary webinar. The recorded webinar and slides are going to be posted on our website for later viewing.